Ready, Madam Clerk? Ready, Madam Clerk? Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and good evening. It's Tuesday, January 16th, 2020. City Council hearing on Finance. We're going to begin this meeting. We'll have a roll call, Madam Clerk. Present.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilwoman Castillo.
Present.
Councilwoman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Very quick, I noticed that the President Pro Tem is present. Councilman Espinal is present. Ernie Almonte is present. The Treasurer is present. I believe the Internal Auditor is present at this time. The next step is Kenny Cheverini, who's present with the City Solicitor. Mr. Cheverini, City Solicitor's Office, can you announce for the record why and how the City Council Finance can conduct this Zoom meeting?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Governor Gina Raimondo's executive order, whereby she suspended the access of the Open Meetings Act, whereby allowing municipalities in cities and towns such as us to conduct open meetings via the internet, not in person. So we are complying with the suspension of OMA.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Cheverini. Also, for committee members, make note, by the way, if you'd like to have to raise your hand, either through the Zoom, or if you have to, if that's not working, put it up in the air and we'll go through that process. Let the record reflect that Councilwoman LaFortune has joined us. Thank you. So a couple announcements first. Committee members and council members and the public. As you know, we had a public hearing last week in which we invited the stakeholders who are proposing the idea of either defunding or abolishing the Providence Police Department, and we also invited the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Chief of the Police Department, and the police union and council members who are supporting that initiative. Some of the issues we talked about was what they call the SRO, which were police officers inside the school department or in our schools, and they proposed the idea that they should not have them in there anymore. And some council members support that idea. So I thought it was important, council members, you should have received a copy. I forwarded a letter to the Commissioner, Angelica Infante Green, and the Superintendent of Schools, asking them that if, this is something the community is looking to do, which is to remove the police officers from the school system, and that we're in the budget process, and that we'd like to get their input. Do they support that initiative? Do they don't support the initiative? If they don't, why? What's the reasoning? So hopefully we'll hear from the Commissioner and Superintendent of Education, Superintendent of Schools and the Commissioner of Education, and hear them weigh in that issue. They have a stakeholder. They should have a say. So I thought it was important that we give them an opportunity to weigh in. So that letter was sent to them. Hopefully we'll hear back from them, and then we can further deliberate the idea of whether or not to have police officers in the Providence school system, and if the commissioner and the superintendent of schools wants that or not want that, and why. So I thought it was important. The second thing, which I thought was very moving, was some of the testimony, of course, during that hearing, but in particular, there was a statement by Deputy Majority Leader Mary Kay Harris, in which she asked the commissioner, Perry, and I'm paraphrasing, basically that if an event like Floyd happened in Providence, what could happen? Could you address it soon? And he said, and he didn't even question, he said no. And he went through why he couldn't act quickly and fast. And I found it very shocking and surprising. And he talked about the fact it was the policeman's Bill of Rights. And that has created, there's maybe some positive aspects to it, but has created a lot of prohibition from the city to deal with officers misbehaving on the job, misconduct, and doing it in an efficient and effective manner. So I want to let my council colleagues know that I also did some additional research on it, and I thought it was interesting because it's important. I read this law review article, and they talked about the Policeman's Bill of Rights, and he said that, there's a general principle, right, that police officers are expected to maintain the highest standard of professional conduct, and to that end, law enforcement agencies must maintain policies and procedures capable of effectively investigating allegations of officer misconduct. Also, that if police officers have a greater responsibility to conduct themselves in the most professional manner because of their special power to use force, then it is arguably that they should be subject to the closest scrutiny regarding alleged misconduct. This is an article talking about the Policeman's Bill of Rights. For the testimony, approximately about 12 of them, and 12 states have them, and we're one of them. So, it was the impetus that I asked my council colleagues, if you have a chance to, you can go to the Ward 7 webpage in the City Council. I've started an online petition specifically to repeal the the police officers' Bill of Rights. And I'm asking all my council colleagues to support that initiative, to sign on board, sign the petition, let their family and friends know about it, get them to do it. The folks that are listening this evening, let them know about it, and get them to sign this petition. The goal for the petition is to get as many names and many signatures as possible, and then forward the petition to the governor, the speaker, and the president of the Senate. I hope all of you can join me in this initiative, because it seems to me this is one of the issues that should be addressed, and one of the issues that we should do everything in our power to try to address. So I invite everybody to willing to sign the petition. It's on the website now as we speak, and join on board if you agree. I think it's important that this particular Bill of Rights, and just so we get a little history, this Bill of Rights has been around since 1976. It's really interesting, and it clearly, may have been a reason back then, but clearly it seems to be an outdated and out mode of law that should be repealed in order for us to create greater accountability in our police force. So I ask everybody, urge them if they would be willing to join me in signing the petition. It's on Ward 7 webpage, City Council webpage. It's on Twitter, it's on all the social services, social networks, I should say, and hopefully you all can join. Councilwoman Anthony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the effort that you're making, but I know that Councilwoman LaFortune has also been working on this issue for a long time. And I know she's here tonight, and she'd like also to talk about that if that's all right with you. But she can't raise her hand, so there's something wrong with her.
Okay. So council members,
I don't have that option.
Okay, you don't have that option. If you can, just try to raise your hand physically, and we'll go from there. But Councilwoman LaFortune, you'd like to speak? You have the mic.
Thank you very much. So yes, so in fact, I put in a resolution on Friday, so that it could be on the docket for this Thursday, requesting the state to repeal the law enforcement Bill of Rights, which is also something that I spoke about at last week's meeting. I just think, I just want to make a note, because part of the whole movement and why people are calling for us to really hold our police officers accountable, to look at the oppressive structures and systemic racism that currently exist within our societies, is that for centuries, Black bodies have been deemed invisible or less than. And I'm just thinking about this whole initiative that you're launching. And it just feels like that was an idea that was appropriated because someone else, and so happened to be a person of color, did the work, did the research, put in the resolution on Friday for it to be introduced this Thursday. And yet all of a sudden you have taken the credit for something where someone else did work. And so I think what perhaps would have been a different approach is perhaps having a conversation with me or other members who had signed the petition. But this is part of the issue. These continuous oppressive behaviors in which Black bodies are invisible. So basically all of this work that was done by someone of color is taken by someone else. And that adds on to the layer of issues that so many people last week articulated in such an eloquent and also impassionate way. And we have to draw the line somewhere. And we also have to set the example as leaders of this great city, as we're advocating and trying to do the right work. But we should also be thoughtful about the way we approach things and how we engage with one another.
Thank you, Councilwoman Fortune. So I hope you still can join and sign the petition, because I think it's important, and I hope we can move forward. I think it's important that it shows that all of us should be rolling in the same direction, and that it's in a positive direction. Clearly, from the passion, per the public hearing that we had in the Finance Committee meeting last week, listening to the Commissioner's statement that we could not do anything, that to me seemed to be just a shocking statement that this particular state statute would be a prohibition. And I hope that you can sign it. It's on PVD Ward 7. I hope all my council colleagues can support it. I hope we all can roll in the same direction, because I think this has the potential to have a positive change. We need to put appropriate pressure on changing this and repealing this. I hope you can support it. And also, by the way, in the future, we council members, you're looking to submit stuff like that, I think it's great. I think it's great that it seems like like minds are thinking, we're all thinking alike in a positive way. And I think that's a good sign. And hopefully all of us can keep on thinking that way. Hopefully all the council colleagues can join you mentioned your resolution, and hopefully you all can join my petition. I should say the people's petition. Hope everybody can do that. So we're going to move on.
Chairman, I don't think you're acknowledging what I'm saying, and you're not taking any accountability for what I'm saying.
Councilman, I am acknowledging what you're saying. Councilman, I am acknowledging what you're saying. There's no need to get a debate. This is a positive thing both of us are doing. So why don't we just...
It's not about it not being a positive thing that we're both doing. What it's important for you to acknowledge, if this is the type of work that you want to do, and if you are understanding why this Bill of Rights needs to be repealed.
Yes, I agree. It should be repealed.
If you're doing it based on the basis of this, then I think you also have to acknowledge what I'm trying to say around appropriating a work that's being done by someone else of a minoritized community, and then it being taken as your own. So it's not collaborative. And so I just hope that, and the docket was shared with everyone. That information was sent to the communications folks. And so what I hope that you understand is, if we're going to do the work, if we are acknowledging why this movement exists, then we also have to recognize our own internalized behaviors and biases and try to address them in order for us to move forward. Because what you did is not okay. And you're not even acknowledging what you did or taking any form of accountability. So I just hope that you understand where I'm coming from, and moving forward, you acknowledge
Councilwoman, I recognize what you say. I just don't agree with what you said, because I think what you're saying is inappropriate. Unfortunately, I understand. I've heard this statement numerous times during the decades of being a councilman, where council members have similar ideas and everybody submits resolutions and ordinances at the same similar time. The idea is everybody tries to row in the same boat, tries to move in the positive direction if they both have a similar idea. It's interesting, the fact that no one has the monopoly on any great idea, and that's what makes this process so great, so good. I don't agree with your statement. I find it kind of odd, really. I don't know where it's really coming from, but I hope at the end of the day that you can join and sign the petition, because I think we both agree that it would be a positive movement for the people of Providence. And the other thing is that this isn't about me. It's not about you. It's about the people that we serve.
It's clearly about you. And obviously the mindset in which you're approaching this is the same mindset that has disproportionate
Councilwoman, you've been muted because you have not been acknowledged. I'm going to move on with...
That whole mindset is the same mindset that has disproportionate.
All right, we have to now move on with the committee, all right? It's sad that we're trying to do a positive thing and people feel that way, but I'm going to move on to the next item now. Madam Clerk, item number 1, please.
Discussion and potential vote relative to
Thank you.
capital improvements against the following.
Thank you. All right, so, Mr. Mancini, who do we have on this matter? Unmute him, please.
That are oppressive. And please, and again, you're muted. You stated that this people called
Madam
the N-word.
Madam Councilperson, please respect the process. Please respect the rules, Robert's Rules of Order. I understand you have a hard time with the rules. I recognize that, and you always...
Again, an inappropriate comment.
You have begun inappropriate comments, and unfortunately, you're trying to...
You muted me
change
while
something. Madam Councilperson, you're going to be muted for
and
the
you're
rest of the
doing it again.
Yes, we will. We're going to mute you so I can move on with the meeting.
This
We've
is
heard you.
oppressive behavior. It's
Madam Clerk, your statements are offensive behavior. Mr. Mancini.
Mr. Chairman, this evening you have invited Ms. Day to give a review and share important information regarding the CIP, and I have joined her while given an invitation in my capacity as Chief Financial Officer to provide any financial data in support of that bond issue. I believe that she and I should now be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Please raise your right hand. You swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
I do.
Say your name.
Lawrence J. Mancini, Chief Financial Officer of the City of Providence.
Thank you.
Jordan Day, Senior Deputy Chief Operating Officer and CIP Analyst for the City of Providence.
Thank you, Jordan.
So, Mr. Chairman, this evening you have asked Ms. Day and myself to appear before this.
Let the record reflect that President Matos is present. Go ahead, Mr. Mancini.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have asked Ms. Day to appear this evening in her capacity as Senior Deputy Chief Operations and CIP Analyst. She, in that capacity, has provided extensive oversight and extensive collaboration in compiling the CIP information and was submitted on or around the time that we submitted our proposed budget. It is included in your budget documents, and the financing mechanism associated with the CIP previously has always been outstanding results. So I believe this is the new CIP that requires consideration by the City Council. And with that, I would ask your respect to defer the matter now to Ms. Day for her presentation and her testimony.
Thank you, Larry, for that. I don't think that there's a particular plan that's under discussion and review here. It's just related to the total plan. And as it's a rotating plan, I think that makes sense. I did want to take a minute to check with the chairman about what he'd like to review today before I began any matters. So in particular, we have the first bond issuance, which was a $45 million bond, which is one that we're in the process of finalizing. And then there's the most recent CIP that was approved in January of this year, which is for $115 million. And that bond closed at the end of March, and so our team is working on that at this time. I'm not sure if there's a preference by which item we'd like to review first. I did share some materials when I was originally scheduled to come before the committee, and I don't know if that was circulated to the committee members ahead of time.
So I believe it's this item, and it's on the, what's it called, what page?
That one is on the Confluence webpage.
Confluence webpage. I believe there's a document, it's a 3-page document. It's called 2017A and 2017B Revenue Bonds Financial Snapshot.
Yes, the scorecard document.
The council members have, committee members have it? And then, while we're looking for that, Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you. So I am looking at the 2017A, 2017B revenue bond financial snapshot.
Okay.
For the edification of our group here today and our participants, could I ask, you had basically said that was, this document is referencing the $45 million bond offering, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so there was premium bonding with this, as I recall, which is the reason why the total at the bottom is up to 48.5. Is that correct?
That's
So could I
correct.
just for the sake of our new participants and the sake of our discussion, Larry, can you just speak to that? Just give us a quick summary. So 45 million bond deal and what? What happened to make it get to 48?
Thank you, Madam Leader and Madam Vice Chair. So, ladies and gentlemen, so with respect to bond financing, the intricacies of bond financing allow for additional upfront capital known as premium. It is predicated on the market conditions that are associated with bond pricing and bond placement. And so when a particular issuer, in the case of the City of Providence, or if we use one of our other attended entities such as Public Building Authority, are seeking additional funds to assist with project development, the manner in which that can be accomplished is by pricing the coupons, which is an interest rate calculation, different and slightly higher by taking premium upfront. In most cases, in order for a bond issue to remain tax exempt, it is the considered opinion of most bond counsel, including the bond counsel that the city has used, that that bond premium would probably generate no greater than 10% of the bond issue currently being considered. So in both that case, approximately 10% or $4 million was the bond premium that was used along with the par amount, and that was able to generate that additional amount of money that could meet new project needs. And I must say, Madam Leader, that I know that you're well acquainted with that because you were one of the very first council members who was quite in tune with how bond premium does work, and we've been using that, I think, successfully to finance in these great market interest rate market conditions, the ability to widen our project development. At no greater expense. We've had an outstanding, in fact, the most recent bond issue that closed was such an outstanding issue during cataclysmic conditions in the market that it's a credit to all of us, council included, for putting the support behind the administration to get that done. So that's a little bit about bond premium.
So that explains clearly why everybody's understanding as we went to market for a $45 million bond, and we're actually putting out, or we're actually reaping the benefit of 48.7 into project work. So that's what's before us in this document. I just wanted to lay the groundwork, and this work is pretty much done. So with that, I'm good, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood what we were looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Leader.
Thank you. Do you want to reference this? Does everybody have it in front of them, this document?
Yes.
I myself am having technical difficulties with the version on my computer, but that's not your problem.
Council members have it? The committee members have it?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So this document just serves to provide an update on the status of all of the projects that have been in progress since this bond was first issued in 2017. I believe it closed late 2017 after it was approved by the council in August. And so we've been working on this since December 2017 and moving those projects forward over time. As of right now, forgive my numbers, but we're roughly about 85% complete with the projects on the $48.5 million bond. You'll see a status indicated on the spreadsheet in the second column. If there's a check mark, that means that the project was completed. I believe if I'm correct, it's just about 80 out of 92 projects. And so that is no small feat. It took us a lot of time to get the project up and running. As of the May 12th Providence Public Building Authority meeting, we spent just over $36.7 million So there are some projects that are in flux, and we're working with bond counsel to extend and complete that execution in order to make sure that we do so in compliance with the bond that's been issued. At this time, there are just several projects that, due to unanticipated factors, we had to postpone the analysis on those projects, or there were additional steps that needed to be taken. One example of that is the Joseline Recreation Center. You'll see on your sheet that that project is not yet complete, as we identified an oil tank in the property when we first conducted our site visit. And since then, we've experienced just some issues with making sure that is properly removed. At this time, that oil tank has now been removed, and we believe that the project will be completed well before the end of this year. Unfortunately, it did take some time in order to make sure that we had the appropriate tools in order to make sure that that was executed properly. I don't know if folks have any specific questions about certain projects. I will do my best, as my computer is challenging right now. Unfortunately, the file won't stay open, but I will do my best to answer any questions that folks have.
All right. Vice Chair, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like, I think the document pretty much speaks for itself, and I appreciate the work that has gone into this almost Herculean effort, for sure. There's just a lot of projects going on at the same time. But I also want to note that the council had asked you to update this spreadsheet so that we could understand the change orders, the cost of that, if there were savings, if we were going over budget, and you've been able to present that along the way, and we greatly appreciate it. So I guess what I'd like to know, what projects are still outstanding, and do we have enough money to finish the projects as presented? If maybe we could go through the items that are open versus, at this point, I'd like to know what we haven't finished.
So there are a couple of projects that I can touch on very quickly without pointing directly to the document, but just for reference. So two projects in particular, Buckland Field and Conley Stadium, those projects are in progress. We expect them to be substantially completed just after the June 30th date. And I know folks have seen the progress that has been made on those fields is significant. We've invested, I believe, just about $6 million total into those two fields. It's been a huge feat, and those new fields will be durable and sustainable so that our teams can play when it's raining or just after it's rained, and we'll be able to forecast out when those improvements are needed. But those are two projects that are currently in progress and have been able to continue moving forward over the last 6 months while we've been experiencing a global pandemic. One item that has been particularly challenging is the City Hall elevator repair. We coupled that with additional funds that were either, I believe, in the $20 million bond, the $10 million bond, or in the 2020-2024 CIP, so in the $115 million. So we are working to spend that down as quickly as we can. There are some parts that we recently ordered that will take about 6 weeks. So as I'm sure you know, 6 weeks from now brings us over June 30th. So there are just some things that we are working on that are in progress, but yes, it's moving forward. There are some repairs happening to at least 5 fire stations. There was a delay due to the fact that our fire stations continued to be occupied. And so in coordination with the fire department in those fire stations, we ceased or limited our work while we were trying to monitor COVID and make sure that no one was exposing themselves at any risk. Of course, we're continuing to do road and sidewalk work as we finalize whatever has been done over the last 6 months. Many of those dollars were spent on planning for the 2020-2021 paving cycle. So those are just a sample of some of the projects. I know that there are more that are not checked off on that sheet, but that sheet is what we presented to the Providence Public Building Authority as of 512, which is the authorized spending from that board. We'll actually have an updated one sometime within the next week or so to share once that board approves our expenditures.
Internal Audit, did you have a statement?
I
Auditor?
have questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I have questions about the next set of bonds when we get to that discussion, if that's okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Ms. Day, do you want to continue, or committee members, do you have any questions?
I wanted to know if the leader had any specific questions after I've given that feedback, or if you wanted me to go
Are
through
those the
project
only
by project.
outstanding? Mr. Chair, if I could continue, are those the only
Sure.
outstanding items for this bond?
Because I'm having trouble viewing the document myself, I can't.
Okay.
So that's why I'm having technical difficulties every time I open it. It shuts it down, which is not making this presentation easy. So I had those notes written shorthanded. I know
Someone
that
else
there
on your
were-
team that can testify for us, that has access to the document?
I'm the only person here that has access to it outside of, I'm not sure if Larry has it.
I do not. Not at the moment. I'm sorry.
Chairman,
no.
is there a way to help Ms. Day so she can testify regarding the documents that's in front of us? Do you have any suggestions?
I'm trying to get it right now.
Are you able to get on the, what's it called, the Confluence? Confluence website, Ms. Day?
I don't believe so.
So.
Mr. Chair,
Internal Audit?
I can forward her the link if that's helpful.
Guess let's try.
I'm very sorry about this.
We always have another day.
That was funny. I liked it.
No pun intended.
See, there is levity in this committee. See that?
I just had one question for Mrs. Day.
No, Councilman Taylor, Vice Chair? Vice Chair?
Yes, sir. Am I yielding? Am I yielding my time?
I'm not looking to yield your time. I'm looking to give everybody fair amounts of time, of course. Can Councilman Taylor ask a question, or do you,
Well,
while she's working a technical difficulty?
Absolutely, if Ms. Day is comfortable answering questions when she doesn't have the document in front of her, that's fine with me.
Thanks to the auditor, I was able to pull up the document. I'm happy to answer the councilman's question and then go back to the review on those projects.
That's okay. I was just going to be sarcastic. We can move forward.
Okay.
You can open the
I was trying to fill it, yeah.
Councilman Taylor, hang on one second. Now that you have the document, can you answer the Vice Chair's questions first, and then we'll go to Councilman Taylor?
Yes, I do have it here. So the Manton Gateway project in particular, well, that's no longer funded by CIP funds. It's funded by CDBG funds, which we've discussed previously with this committee. We are tracking it. It's still in progress, not complete at this time. Marino Park design is complete. The construction was awarded to U.S. Pitch Care. As folks know, or I believe at least the chairman has been recently updated, we recently seeded the grass there, and so the work is wrapping up at that location. We're hoping it takes root soon.
Is the sprinkler system installed?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I will check with Wendy.
Thank you. Continue, I'm sorry.
Scalabrini Piazza improvements, so that is still in progress.
Excuse me, Ms. Day, excuse me. Yes, thank you. Could you please reference the number associated, the CIP line item number that when you're talking about it so we can find it easily, if you wouldn't mind?
Yes, of course. Sorry, I was going in order of the ones that have not been completed, but I will do that moving forward. So the projects I listed previously, 3.12 and 3.15 are currently incomplete. 3.17 is not complete at this time. 3.33 is not complete at this time.
And what's holding back that one? What's holding back Twitchell? What's the issue?
So I have that it's construction underway. I don't have any explanation here for delay. Let me see if I can pull up the file on that very quickly. One moment. I'm sorry, I'm not able to pull that particular project up right now. I'm just having connectivity issues with my files, but I will provide an update with regard to that park tomorrow. No problem there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
What else?
I believe we're wrapping up the work. We just recently did this, 3.39 Dexter Training Grounds. Those are park improvements and lighting upgrades. I believe that project will either be represented as complete or nearing completion in our June submission to the Providence Public Building Authority. Fargnoli Park, the roofing project is completed, and at the time, we're almost complete with that project. I think there was just some work that was finalized, some concrete or cement that was poured in the last few weeks, so we should be wrapping that project up shortly. 3.43 Denesian Park concession stand and restrooms. I believe that project is nearing completion. Pleasant View and Obadiah Brown, I believe that project is also nearing completion, if not already completed as well. I think we're just doing, there's some billing that's outstanding on that project. That is associated with, so project 3.45 is the one I just referenced. Project 3.60 is associated with the same project, and I believe that's complete at this time. 3.62 Denesian Park, that is not complete at that time. It's associated with project 3.43. 3.64 Water Parks, that is not complete as well. Where phase 1 is complete, but phase 2 is in progress. As I referenced earlier, projects 3.74 and 2.34 Buckland Field and Conley Stadium Turf are nearing completion. Those projects will be completed shortly after the June 30th deadline. There's ongoing work for project 1.4 for sewer work. We're mostly spent down on that line item at this time. 2.03, the City Hall elevator upgrades, as I mentioned, that is currently being coupled with funds from another bond issue, and so that work is in progress and nearing, this particular work is nearing completion. Yes, ma'am.
Could we please go back to 1.4 sewers and stormwater management?
Yes, ma'am.
What are we doing there? What is that project about?
So there was a 1.5 million split between city and the Roger Williams Park. There were 4 contracts awarded. At this time, we've spent 1.2 million. I don't have the specifics as to where those improvements were made, but I can share those with you as soon as I speak with someone in DPW who's the project manager.
I'm interested in understanding what CIP dollars are being spent on sewers. The sewer line in total for Providence. Is this something that was dedicated just to Roger Williams Park?
Not exclusively. It was also for external to Roger Williams Park, as far as I'm aware. So it's been done for city infrastructure outside of the park as well.
Have we received an analysis of our sewer line, the competency of it, or the structure, what condition it's in? Have we assessed that as we did an assessment on our sidewalks and pavement?
So I know that's something that we're interested in doing. I don't know if that's something that we've actually started quite yet. Unfortunately, I don't have an exact answer for you. We had a conversation about moving this forward. And I believe previously when Craig Hockman appeared before the committee under the DPW budget presentation, he said that's something that we would like to be able to do in order to be able to proactively do that work. I know that there are a number of areas that we identify, depending on the storm or matter, where we're seeing backups, whether it be monthly, quarterly, annually. And so to be able to proactively deal with those rather than addressing them as a storm comes, it would be ideal to be able to address those issues right away ahead of time.
Could you kindly provide for our auditor the work that is being done or contemplated under 1.4? I'd like to understand the entire scope of work.
Of course, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
No problem. Projects 2.05, 2.06, and 2.07, those are all recreation center upgrades. I see here that it says that they're in construction, but at this time, the scope of work that we originally went out to design for has been completed. We are seeing if there's any other scopes of work that are authorized that we're able to do with the funds that are remaining. And one example, I know that I wish I had the quad charts available so I could demonstrate an example for you. Unfortunately, again, computer issue, but we're trying to figure out what we're able to do with those additional funds if they are still available in order to be able to provide as much support to those particular facilities as we can. Project 2.11 is the Silver Lake Community Center building improvements. That project, I believe, is still in construction. And then you'll see projects 2.13, 2.14, 2.16, and 2.17, and 2.22 and 2.24 are all fire stations. As referenced before, there were some delays with fire station work due to some of them being occupied. The only building where that is an exception is the Mount Pleasant Fire Station, where there is braided funding and the work is still continuing. I drove by it today, and they're currently rebuilding the floor that holds the apparatus.
Okay.
Project 2.29 is the Elmwood Community Center upgrades. We've done some work, and I can provide a more substantive update to the auditor with the scope of work that's been completed. I know that Councilwoman Castillo has also put in some of her neighborhood infrastructure funds to support that project, in addition to funds that were issued in the $10 million bond. So that work is ongoing, and we're working towards the completion of that project as fast as we can. As mentioned before, project 2.33, the Joseline Recreation Center elevator and second floor renovations. There were some hazardous materials identified at Joseline Recreation Center, meaning the fuel tank that was stored underground. We are currently in the process of moving that project forward. We have successfully removed the tank. As far as I'm aware, there have been no additional complications with the removal of the tank, and so we are moving that forward. Additionally, we've identified funding to complete the second floor renovation that will help make that space a usable space again.
Okay.
Project 1.1 roads, as referenced before, we're mostly spent down here. Out of the bills that we've paid, that's 15 million has been spent at this point. About 18 million, 18.2 million have been encumbered. This is also supporting our overall spend on planning for the 2020-2021 capital plan, so we can use as much funds directly for paving as possible. Project 1.2, which is sidewalk improvements, contracts 1 through 6 are still in progress. We have spent to date just about 3 million, and we encumbered 3.3. So we're actually just about on budget there, wrapping up. We're spending down those dollars as we speak.
When will all of the sidewalks be done? When will 1 through 6 all be done?
I can confirm the exact date. I know that there were some variances, but I believe that most of that work is expected to be completed soon. I think we said somewhere within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because we were able to mobilize on that those funds since we already had them sooner.
And are you coordinating the NIF dollars as part of that sidewalk work? You are? So
Yes, we are. So we went out to bid and planned our contracts for the CIP. As you all know, you received a proposed plan from the Department of Public Works that was reviewed by me for those improvements. And so we are coordinating whatever contract we have in place for that work to also support neighborhood infrastructure funds and CDBG dollars.
And the sidewalks and the pavement are being done in the order of need. In other words, you did a scan and you graded each of our sidewalks and our streets, so we know which streets and sidewalks are in the worst condition, and our focus is getting those done. That's the priority.
So it is our focus. It is our focus. I would say that there's a point of clarification I'd like to make with regard to that. There are definitely factors that we take into consideration, whether they're on high traffic walking paths or high pedestrian areas. If there are highly traveled areas that need maintenance in order to extend their lifetime, we try to prioritize that as well. Some of the improvements that were made as recently as 2006 or 2007, their lifetime is beginning to expire. And so what we're doing is, by using crack sealing, we're actually extending most of that life on those particular roads, another 4 to potentially 14 years. So we don't need to focus on paving those roads and can prioritize the roads that are in the worst shape. I believe that was shared with counselors as a background document, but I'm also happy to share that with you in addition to any other materials requested tonight.
Thank you. Continue.
Project 1.3, complete streets citywide. So at this time, the version that you're looking at is not the most up to date. So the funding here, we just received our final invoice on this project. So we are actually at completion on this project. So what is reflected here is not correct. So we did buy bike racks and complete the master plan, known as the Great Streets Plan, with these funds in order to inform future investments and support overall pedestrian-friendly roads.
Pedestrian-friendly or bike-friendly roads?
Pedestrian-friendly.
Pedestrian and bike-friendly? And car-friendly?
Yes. All modes of transport friendly.
Friendly.
As Gil Penosa says, from 8 to 80.
That's an important job. That's an important function, because we have a lot of people in our neighborhoods that are complaining that this Complete Streets initiative is not really focused on pedestrian travel because of the conditions of our sidewalk. So in your master plan, do you have, are you focused on the importance of getting our sidewalks in good shape? I know that's an issue with the council president.
That's a priority. We're also looking at traffic calming as one of those major areas of concern, and where we can make improvements for pedestrians to walk safely in order to support traffic calming. Leader, you're familiar with this method that we use. Raised crosswalks is one area where we not only do traffic calming, but create opportunities for people to safely cross from one point of the street to the next. So we try to focus as best as we can, but also if the area isn't safe and there are trip hazards, we try to be mindful of that as well. And so our DPW team meets with the Department of Planning and Development in order to review the priorities that have been outlined by both divisions to find synergy.
So speaking of synergy, I have a number of raised crosswalks that have been proposed. When will they be going in?
I believe that we provided an update to your team last week. I don't know the dates off the top of my head. I'm going to have to go back and look at my notes, and I'm happy to follow up with you after this meeting.
Okay, I'll be happy to see that. The neighbors have been asking. I've been told it's part of this this CIP that we're looking at, and we're anxious to get that work done.
Absolutely. I hear that.
Okay. All right, continue. I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
No problem. I appreciate the question. I already reviewed sewers and stormwater management. So you can see above here, this is 1.4. We had talked about this briefly. So again, citywide, but I'm going to make an effort to provide the content for all the work that was done there. Project 1.5, the Fox Point Hurricane Barrier, that funding was removed from this project and transferred to the master lease. So that project is no longer counted here. The last project that is incomplete.
Excuse me, Ms. Day, do we have ongoing maintenance responsibilities for the hurricane barrier?
We do. I'm not the best person to speak to those maintenance responsibilities, but I can definitely share more information. As folks know, we are responsible for the gates that close on the street, not necessarily the hurricane barrier itself.
Okay.
And so there are certain responsibilities we have with that structure. That's actually already one of the projects that's funded in the $115 million bond as part of the 2020-2024 CIP.
Great. You're
Additionally, the last project here is 1.9, the Canada Dam repair. I'm going to double check these numbers because this number, it appears to be incorrect. We are, or maybe the payout is incorrect, but we are nearing completion on this project. We are on budget with this project. I am happy to report that this dam has been preserved at this time, and we have made the necessary repairs to make sure that it is safe. So at this time, for a project that was spent, we originally had budgeted $2.5 million for the temporary repair that we actually were able to make happen. It was $1.15 million. We spent $1.13, and I actually think that's right about there as well. We'll end up on budget. So you can see that as of right now, we've encumbered 96.97% of what we've spent, or of what we plan to spend so far.
Great. And will you have enough money to complete the projects that you've started?
I'd like to say the answer is yes. We definitely coupled funding sources. So some of these projects are not just one-off projects, they're continuous improvements. I believe when the Department of Public Property was present, they talked about the facilities condition assessment that was recently done. And so we're utilizing that as a tool to forecast improvements at all of our publicly owned facilities. And so we'll continue to see some projects that are still on this sheet that get additional improvements down the line based off of that assessment. So now we've done an assessment for our buildings, we've done one for our roads, we've done one for our sidewalks. We're continuing to make improvements. The point is heard about making sure that we know what we're dealing with underground, specifically when it relates to sewer. And so I think while these projects might end here, they might continue to carry on in other ways. But as far as this bond issue is concerned, I do not believe that there is a project that will not be completed.
Thank you. And have all of the projects been started? So there isn't one project that is just laying dormant. Everything started?
The only project that did not happen under this funding stream would be the Fox Point Hurricane Barrier, as those funds were moved over to the master lease for those improvements. And I believe there was about $200,000 spent on that already.
Out of this pool of funds?
Not out of this pool of funds, out of the master lease funds. I apologize.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. That answers my questions at this point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Day.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilman Taylor?
I just had one quick question about the extra CDBG money from last year. Are those projects underway? Or, well, I know they're not my area, but I didn't know if they are in somewhere.
Most of those projects, and I can provide an update on those specific projects that were used as replacement projects for CDBG funds. Most of those projects are either complete or nearing completion.
Okay, can you check on my ward and let me know? Because I haven't seen it.
Yes,
I
of
know
course.
it's only 4. I only think I gave him 4 or 5 sidewalks, but I haven't seen any activity.
I will, so, sorry, are you referencing prior year fiscal funds? Because I wasn't sure if you were referencing the fiscal year funds or if you were referencing the replacement projects that we had to, in order to pay back the federal government.
No, last year, I guess there was extra CDBG money that I guess maybe it was because they were charging for the details or something. And Emily reached out to me and said there was extra money, I guess, and I gave her like 4 sidewalks, and I haven't seen any activity yet.
Okay, I will actually check with her on that. I was not aware of that. I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Day, could you, well, it's before us right now, can you update this list and, just dovetailing on what Chief Taylor said about the ones that were transferred to the CDBG request and stuff like that, just the status of those projects if the money was spent, okay?
Yes, of course.
Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you. Before Ms. Day does that, when there is extra money available, what is the process that the administration uses? I understand, I just heard Councilman Taylor reference that Emily reached out to him. Do we reach out to all council people equally? How do we make sure that the funds are distributed equally throughout the city when there's extra funds like that?
So those are CDBG funds, and I'm not sure the reasoning behind why there was additional funds available and whether or not they were extra funds that were allocated towards a project in the councilman's ward, or if it was something from a prior allocation that was no longer available. So I unfortunately, I'm not able to speak to that. When it comes to the CIP, we try to fulfill the scopes that we've outlined. And if a scope cannot be completed, or for the amount of funds, we know that bond counsel says as long as it's an eligible activity, which is what we've defined in this bond issuance, that we're able to use the funds that are allocated in this bond issuance towards those projects.
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good.
Great. Council members, any more questions on this portion? Committee members? Okay. Did you want to go on to the next piece, Ms. Day, or? Are you ready for questions, internal order, for your questions now?
Well, it is about the $115 million bond.
So I'm prepared to speak about the $115 million bond. I don't believe there's any supplemental documentation that's been provided at this time. We haven't begun our billing process, but we have begun projects to get those moving. I think you all know that based off of the materials that we've shared, whether it be roads or sidewalks or communicating with you about specific projects. We're providing those updates as we have them. We've been trying to go out to bid for several services and making sure that we're optimizing our resources and utilizing whatever we do have available internally to do some cost savings. I don't know if there's something specific that folks would like me to touch on with regard to the $115 million, but I know that I'm happy to answer questions.
So,
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Oh, yeah. Internal order, then Vice Chair. Internal order?
You have $8.5 million for an OPM and a CM. Have they been hired?
Not at this time. We're in discussions with the Providence Public Building Authority about which vendors would be the best for those services.
But you have already started bidding out projects, so there's no one managing it currently.
So there are project managers internally, the same project managers that have been on board. They've gone out to bid. We're reviewing their documents. Our current OPM is facilitating the transition and building the documentation that we need in order to have a successful transition. But so we don't have someone on board at this time. That is correct.
Will you be hiring the construction manager, and that person will be similar to what Gilbane does for the school department?
I'm not looking for the same relationship that we have with Gilbane, but yes, I am looking for someone who would be able to support project managers in project execution.
And last question for this, you're still anticipating $8.5 million for those services?
I don't have a number on that yet. So we have gone out to bid through the MPA. I think it's 494. I have to double check the MPA number to be exact, for the construction manager. And so we got varied responses based off of those costs. One that is significantly lower than the other, but the services that were provided were significantly different. So we have reached out to the vendors to do some clarifying questions that both vendors were asked for the same information. With that said, there's a question about whether or not we do need an owner's representative moving forward, as that was something that I believe the Providence Public Building Authority had expressed interest in. And so we're just trying to have a healthy conversation about what the need is, whether it's a clerk of the works, an owner's rep, a financial manager, something of that nature that would be hired through the bond issue. Because the pricing varies on those, I don't know what the budget would, we're working on that. I will have more information in the next month or two about what the total cost is to that line.
Okay, may I continue, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Madam Auditor. And then the Vice Chair.
I just have two more questions. You have $1 million in there, 250 each in the areas of electrical, plumbing, envelope for buildings, just generics. Can that be used for any city building?
Yes, they can. Except for schools.
I just want to remind the committee that, all right, just to remind the committee that the public property increased their budget by $500,000 for that purpose. They were at $590,000. They went to $1,090,000. So there possibly is a savings in the general fund. And if I may, my last question.
Of course.
Madam Auditor, go ahead.
There is a letter of advertisement in front of the Board of Contract and Supply for $500,000, $300,000 to be funded from this bond for the Police Training Academy. Can you explain that?
It's the Public Safety Training Academy, so it would be for both police and fire. And that is not a guarantee that we will be utilizing CIP dollars that is a part of a cap.
Are you
associated with one of the three options?
Are the specifications to build a new training facility for $500,000? Because you have 1.75 in there for a training academy.
So this is a complicated plan. As we have an immediate need for a training facility, since we have an academy coming up in late this fall, so we'll need space for them by December of 2020. At least as of right now, that is the path that we have. Because of that, we'll need a facility that we're able to move into immediately. And whether that be a space that we rent or lease to own, we wanted to be able to identify a funding source for those. And if there was any immediate necessary improvements that we were able to make to those facilities, in order for us to be able to utilize them, we have those funds identified. With that said, if there is a facility that we are able to lease to own and it exceeds the $500,000 threshold, we would entertain whether or not that was a worthwhile investment and potentially use the remaining CIP dollars to do that. With that said, we're still looking at any of our own facilities while we do this. That's not off the table. We're just trying to figure out exactly what our options are because we have a very immediate need this December.
Okay, and the PBBA approves.
So hang on 1 second. Is that immediate need based on the idea that there may be a police academy in December?
That is correct, sir.
Right. So that's still based on that hypothetical may happen, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. General Order, then Vice Chair.
And the PBBA approves leasing of a building under a capital improvement plan?
It's as long as it's a lease to own, it is a bond eligible activity. I believe that's correct, Larry. We can't hear you, Larry.
Yes, pardon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Auditor, that is correct. Anything that goes through the PBA requires what we call a lease or lease arrangement.
Okay, thank you. All set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. The auditor actually touched upon one of the points that I wanted to make, that I'm aware that the $115 million bond, CIP bond, had provisions for building property, building repair and maintenance, which is why I was concerned about that extra $500,000 that was added in our budget, which takes me to my original point for asking that the CIP be brought before the Finance Committee. And that is, knowing what we know now, I asked that all of our current bondings be reviewed to see if we had projects that hadn't begun, or just to relook at projects that we're thinking about in light of COVID-19 and the challenges that we face with 2021 budget. I asked if the $115 million bond package of projects could be reviewed to see if we could take any stress off the 2021 budget. That's an example. That $500,000 is an example of one way that we can take some stress off the existing budget. So has that process taken place? Have we reviewed the $115 million bond offering and its projects associated with it to date, with that lens?
So I'll let Larry speak to the budget side of things. But with regard to the projects, because these projects were approved as recently as January, and we did a really thoughtful review of those projects at the end, the projects that are specified here are still projects that we anticipate we're able to move forward. And so I don't see any projects not happening that are on the current CIP. So I did want to say that out loud.
And I think that's fine this day. I think that's fine this day, but obviously a lot has changed since January. And I think that it's prudent for us to go through the exercise of reviewing all projects, particularly if they haven't begun. And I recognize that when we approve a CIP bond offering, we approve the projects. And if we need to make a change in those projects, we're happy to bring it back before the council and look at each project again. But it would behoove us. This is a lot of money. And if we can use it in a different way, knowing what we know now, to take stress off of our budget, we should surely do that. Larry, do you have any thoughts?
I do. So, Madam Leader, so while I agree with Ms. Day that given that the bond issue only closed in March with projects that were approved by the City Council in January, and I speak to the finance side of it, but from a project management perspective, I would certainly defer to Ms. Day. I'm not aware of any projects in there other than the ones that were specifically identified this evening that were included for a electrical or building envelope. But I'd be cautious to remind the council and the finance committee that while we could seek opinion of that from bond council, and there could be project substitution where they align with the original project missions, they cannot be reclassified for non-capital. They cannot be for project repair. So it would be, certainly any project could be reviewed, and if it was not imminent or there was a better need, that by around this time, we thought we had to cover from general fund expenditures, including something that was a capital in nature but not repair. All I would say is that bond council would have to opine on whether or not that would be an appropriate substitution, but I would say the general rule is replacing capital item with a repair item would be prohibited.
Well, I thank you for that. I'd like to ask our finance team to go through the exercise of reviewing the possibilities.
Internal Auditor, Treasurer, Mr. Almonte, could you go through that process for us, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then maybe you can report back to the committee sometime next week.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll schedule that. Vice Chair,
That's fine. I would like the opportunity to go through the upcoming bond, the $115 million bond, line by line, to review and refresh everybody's memory of what we're spending this money on.
okay. So then, can you work on that, the financial team on that one?
Is that question posed to me, sir?
No, not to, with Jimmy, the Internal Auditor, Treasurer, and Mr. Almonte, and of course, working with you, of course. All
Yes, sir.
Sure, Mr. Chairman.
right, thank you. Vice Chair, you have the mic.
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did you have anything else further you want to discuss?
No, I did also just want to remind the body that a 2021 to 2025 plan was submitted as the CFO referenced earlier. The plan as it is currently outside of FY21 an unfunded CIP. And so I just wanted to note that for the purpose of this conversation, that submission identified no changes in the funding that were allocated to projects. And so that column is just a continuation of the projects that were funded previously. And that anything that's future, of course, is unfunded and a proposal until we have approved funding sources.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
No, Mr. Chair, not at this time.
Council members? Okay, that's it. Ms. Day?
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Vice Chair?
Just to follow up on Ms. Day, she said that, we can't change, or, that's an unknown through 2024 or whatever, but we can certainly affect change in 21. That's what I need to look at, and that's what we should be looking at. We need to focus very closely on the dollars that we're spending. They are precious borrowed dollars. When I tell my constituents that we're paving streets, we're borrowing funds to pave our streets. So we need to do it wisely. We need to make sure that our expenditures make sense because we're essentially paying for it twice. I just think that in the world that we're in today, we need to exercise due diligence and we need to look at very harshly at every expenditure in 2021, particularly those that are being paid for with borrowed dollars.
And
So,
I
know that our treasury team is going to be working, our finance team is going to be working with Ms. Day and Mr. Mancini, but I just continue to say, I've been saying it all along through this budget season, that we just have to do the legwork. We have to do our due diligence, and we have to make sure that what we're spending is clear in everyone's minds. And if it is not essential, we should be redirecting our dollars.
Yeah, it's well said. Well said, Vice Chair. I'm looking forward to the City Council's financial team to put together a review and evaluation of that and then present it hopefully next week so we can further this discussion.
And I don't mean to keep harping on it, but the internal audit is questioning about hiring a project manager. As I can recall, Mr. Chairman, you were very adamant in requesting that we engage a project manager when we're talking about the size of the projects that we're looking at. There's efficiencies to be had in engaging a skilled project manager. So I'm not sure why we're delaying on that or why we started spending money when we don't have a project manager on board. So, again, urgency in that. And I'm hoping when you sit down with our team, that you come back to us with a project list that's been well thought out, and that we have a plan for moving forward that's as efficient as possible. Thank you.
Ms. Day, you might have answered that question already, but what is the thinking of actually moving forward on some projects when don't necessarily have a project manager handling it.
So I want to be clear that we do have city project managers. So we do have folks that are managing these projects right now, that are tracking these projects in addition to myself, and our current OPM, as I said, is setting up the structures to continue that tracking. We were hoping to have an OPM, an owner's representative, contracted before June 30th, which is when our current OPM's contract expires. But there were conversations that I was having with the PPBA that they have expressed interest in identifying that as a cost savings area. We're working on trying to find a solution that works best for everyone, but the city, myself included, as well as others, still believe and do believe that having an owner's representative is the best path forward to ensure that there is thoughtful tracking of all of those projects. So I am confident that sometime soon we will have a resolution on that, and I'm hoping that I will have an answer for you before next week.
And the one that's before us, 2017, there was an owner's rep hired for this one, correct?
Yes, Coast and Harbor.
Did they put together their report or update report on each project? Is that put together?
That's the document that you have it before you. They do a much bigger spreadsheet. No, it's much bigger than that. But that is a simplified version of the document that they put together. They also put together cash flow projections. They put together invoice documentation, and all of that is submitted to the PPBA for review and approval, since they are the funder.
So do we know that if each project was done on time and on budget?
With regard to the $48.5 million that we borrowed prior?
Yeah.
So I can say with certainty that the definition of on time is challenging, because the project wasn't, the CIP was not approved until August of 2017, and we did not receive funds until later that year, and we were in a design phase. So in the time that we were supposed to complete these projects, those projects were supposed to be completed by December of 2019. So we are currently...
What I mean by on time is this: I recognize those were the artificial goal dates that we tried to do as a city. And okay, hopefully we're going to get it done by then. The question is, when the contract was awarded now to an actual contractor, right? There's a schedule. The contractor now says, this is the schedule I'm going to abide by. And I want to make sure that, was the contractor providing the schedule, or did we provide the schedule?
So our project managers define the goals and the timelines that they like to see them completed by.
But then the contractor then goes out to bid, and the contractor signs a contract saying that they will meet this schedule, this time frame, right?
Correct.
Okay, right. So the question I have is, we're talking about that schedule now, which means, for example, you have a contract, the contractor came and said, we're going to do these many streets, or do this improvement. The timeline is 7 months, blank to blank, and this amount of money. The owner's rep or the project manager is making sure that now the contractor is following that schedule and meeting those contract goals. And if they're not, then we get to get what they call liquidated damages because the contractor didn't meet the goals, or we go after the bond. My question is that did the owner's rep, did they track that? Which I presume they did. Like, did they track that schedule?
I believe they did. I would have to confirm exactly the tracking mechanism, as it's not outlined on the scorecard, which is a simplified version of the spreadsheet that they have. And there was only a handful of situations, as far as I'm aware, where those circumstances arose. I know we're dealing with one particular situation currently for work outside of the city, where one of the subcontractors is seeking damages against a prime contractor, and so we're dealing with that currently.
So what I'd like to get a handle on, and the financial team, the city council financial team, I'd like you to delve into what happened with this, meaning, did every contract that was awarded, did this company that we hired, did they make sure that that prime contractor fulfilled and got the job done per the contract that was signed? And if not, why? Meaning, you know, the contract says you're gonna be done in X amount of time, like X amount of budget. Was there change orders during the projects? Was there time extensions during the projects? And if so, why? And who made those calls? Financial team, do you understand what I'm talking about? Internal Auditor, Treasurer, Mr. Almonte, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, well, hopefully they do, but we're looking for that. I'd like to understand if that's happening, if that was done, because that's important. Okay, so if there were change orders, there were other issues, okay? So, I'd like to get so can you make sure that the company connects with the three financial teams here when they get back online? Vice Chair?
Yes, I'm just, so $8.5 million, a lot of money. And I'm just going back to, you know, other uses of dollars. Now, you're saying that we're using a internal staff for project management? Or, you know, are they capable of continuing and thereby being able to use that 8.5 million in a different way?
Not entirely. So the 8.5 million number is an estimate based off of the calculation of the amount of projects that would be managed by someone. So this is like a 1 to 2% variance and a 10% estimate based off of the number of projects that would be managed by someone outside of a city staff person, but would work with a city staffer to manage project tracking. So one project in particular that I don't think any of our staff are, I think we all are suited to handle it and manage the project, but would need more capacity, is a $30 million DPW complex rebuild. And so we would want someone to support in the project management of that facility in particular. And so the cost varies across the board and it depends on the industry. We're working with building out what that would look like. And again, I don't think that that number will be 8.5 million. I just need to figure out exactly how much we're contemplating for the expenses on those items. Because we have such a variance on our owner's rep, I don't know what I have a certain limitation for what we need for our construction manager, and that depends on what projects will be included in that contract.
How much money for sewer repair is contemplated in this CIP?
Let me pull up the most recent version. I believe it's about 3 million, or it's either 3 million or 5 million. I'd have to double check.
And what is the total need? We don't know because we haven't done an analysis of our sewer system, correct?
That is correct, but we are continuing to work towards that.
Okay, I think we would be tremendously remiss if we didn't do a complete and total sewer scan as we did before we spent money on our streets or our sidewalks. I think it's a waste of our money, waste of constituents' money, taxpayer dollars, unless we know that the sewer system is in tough shape. We know it's a huge system, it's an old system, and I can't see spending any money until we do a complete analysis. We know how big the problem is, and then we make sure that we're putting appropriate dollars in that direction. It makes no sense to be paving our streets and fixing our sidewalks and then have to dig them up to fix the sewer lines underneath.
Just to confirm the amount for sewers in the 2020-2024 CIP, it's 5 million for the first 2 fiscal years, which is the funded cycle.
Okay, I don't think it's enough. I'd like the finance team to look at that and come up with a plan to make sure we're not, how much money in the $115 million bond are we spending on paving streets?
We are spending 20 million.
20 million.
Excuse me, 20 million?
Correct.
Well, I don't understand how we can spend 20 million paving streets when we know underneath the pinnings of our streets are failing.
So our team does as much as they can to coordinate that work. They know where the areas of concern are. Of course, if we did a bigger map, we would have to include that as part of our overall planning process moving forward. But it's the same team developing the paving plan that's developing the sidewalk plan that would develop the sewer work.
I think that's great, but the difference is we don't have the scan of the sewer line. I think it's critical. I'm going to push for that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to identify someone to do that, and we'll go out to bid for that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Vice Chair, may I dovetail on your question?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The question is, if you're going to do streets and open them up, maybe that's the time that maybe the sewer department is that you end up spending not 20 million on streets, you end up spending maybe 10 because when you open the street up, that's an opportunity to replace a broken sewer system when we open them up. So I guess what it is it's got to do with coordination. I know you have to coordinate with utilities and et cetera, so maybe, before we start opening up any streets, we force a coordination between the Providence Water, the Providence Sewer folks, and we open a street, and then we know, okay, it's going to be this long street, and we not get all the streets we want done, but since the street's open, we're going to get X amount of miles of street done, X miles of water pipes done, make sure we coordinate with the Providence Water Supply, and we get X amount of miles of new sewage submitted. And by the way, it's also an opportunity to talk about fiber optics and et cetera. So I think what it is that I think what we're looking for is greater planning versus just let's do a bunch of streets, because we have an opportunity to be a little more methodical and try to solve a couple of problems. Because what happens is you pave a bunch of streets, and then the sewer collapsed, then you wasted money. So I would ask. I think it's important that we're going to meet again and we talk about how you're going to handle that. We can't just say 20 million for that. We should say, we're going to open up 25 streets in Providence, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do an entire. It's like detailing a car. We're going to do everything that we're supposed to do, right? Open the street, make sure the curbing's right, make sure ADA compliance, make sure that if the sewer line needs to be replaced, we replace the sewer line. If the storm drain needs to be addressed, we do the storm drain. So then we just do everything from soup to nuts on that street while it's open. So I think that's what we're looking for. At least I think.
That's what we're looking for.
And I think that would be very beneficial that we show that kind of comprehensive plan from soup to nuts on the street. Is that happening? If not, how do we begin that process to do it, Ms. Day?
So if I may respond, may I respond?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
I just want to clarify that we do coordinate with our utilities. So something that we learned from the last time around was that there wasn't enough coordination. And so what we've done is we meet with all of the utility companies early on. They usually have plans that are 2 or 3 years ahead of where we currently are in this moment because we only have a certain amount of funding. So we have done that process where we sit down with them, we review the plan as it nears finalizing, we discuss with them if there's been any shifts in their plan, and this is done regularly. We started meeting with all of the utility companies, I believe in December. We did some additional meetings in January. We did some in February. There's been fewer opportunities, of course, to meet with them in person, but we still have digital communication with them that we're sharing what our plans are and how we're modifying. That way they're addressing the issues and they're not going over our roads that we've already paved, and we're not going into territory where they're going to be doing work soon. So we're doing that level of coordination, and in that we're developing a 5-year long-term plan in order to be able to address roads, sidewalks, et cetera. And so I'm hopeful that all of those things, including sewer, would be included in that project.
So, Ms. Day, so I guess then it leads me to this. The streets that we've done already to date, how many miles of feet of new sewer line did we install?
I don't have that information off the top of my head.
I think the problem is that I don't believe that piece is happening. I appreciate you operating with the utilities, We get that. We're talking about the sewer department. We're talking about
I understand.
an asset of the city, which is the sewer lines, which clearly we have them dating back 100+ years, and they're still being utilized, okay? So what we're looking for is, and I'm gonna bring it back next week, I'd like to know how many miles or feet of sewer line did we replace or repair when we opened up the numerous streets in the past year? That will tell the tale. Because you kept on saying utilities, but I want to make sure you understand, I'm not just talking about National Grid. I am talking about the Providence sewer system specifically.
No, I understand, sir.
We'd like to make sure that, and I understand the city controls it. And it says, let's do some streets, because that always happens. It's a politically expedient maneuver. We pave the street, we all go home, election happens, everybody gets reelected, and then we don't solve the other systemic problems. So we'd like to see a true plan that says, we're gonna open up these 10 streets. The sewer department said these sewers need to be replaced, or they sign off, they don't need to be replaced, right? And if they need to be replaced, they're going to be. Because that is truly a comprehensive plan. I'm talking about what we can control, okay? So I'd like to see that. So I'd like to have that information. Can you get it to us by next couple of days of how much feet or miles of sewer line did we replace in the last 4 or 5 years, for the sake of conversation, of streets that the city repaved, specifically? For example, Atwell's Avenue right now, I know it's all opened up for gas line, I believe it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
A mess.
That's correct.
I didn't see any sewer work done at all. And I don't know if there's gonna be any sewer work done. Looks like now they're done, they're gonna scarify and pave it. But no one's talking about any sewer work on Atwell's Avenue. That's not even my district, but I appreciate the fact that, I have sympathy and empathy for the rest of the city, because it's important that we help all our brothers and sisters throughout the whole city. So that one, Atwell's Avenue, for example, are we doing the sewer lines on Atwell's Avenue? Right? And I can't like you to get that answer to us by tomorrow, okay? And then Vice Chair. Madam Day, can you do that for us?
I can't commit to tomorrow, but I will try to get it to you by the end of this week.
Thank you. Can you get us the internal auditor, please? Vice Chair?
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for dovetailing my questioning, because that's exactly where I was going. But I'd also like to ask Ms. Day, what are we doing about burying our electrical lines in these streets when we're opening them up to that degree?
This isn't has not been something that I have been planning for or have discussed. Is there a particular area, or are you talking about all of our power lines throughout the city and burying them?
Well, some of our main streets that, we're trying to pave. I'm wondering why we're not contemplating burying lines at the same time.
That's
I guess
not
what
been
I'm saying,
a point of discussion quite yet.
It hasn't been, but it should be, and that goes to the chairman and I were talking about having a comprehensive plan that, really looks at these streets holistically, works on the underpinnings, making sure that the sewer lines are in good shape, coordinating any services that need to be taken care of. Burying lines, if we're opening the streets up, it makes perfect sense that we should be contemplating that cost. And it does appear that we're just paving streets for the sake of paving streets. And, another hot topic is putting in bike lanes. And I appreciate the emphasis on putting in bike lanes. I enjoy one on the street that I live on Pleasant Valley Parkway. It is a park, and it's certainly well utilized, but we need to make sure that the infrastructure, the underlying street is in tip-top shape, but before we put in accoutrements, which to me, we really need to think twice about, especially when we're in a tight budget season.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Madam Day, do you have anything you want to offer at this time?
No, I'm happy to be before the committee anytime.
Oh, thank you.
No
Great.
problem.
We'll look forward to having you come back.
I'm ready.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Ms. Day is ready any day.
No.
Oh, Good one.
I live on a very loud street. I apologize for any background noise. I do want to say thank you for this very thorough discussion. It was really helpful to hear your feedback and your thoughts about how we need to continue improving the city. I think we take for granted how unique an opportunity we've had in order to be able to plan for this work. And so I think that we've been very lucky so far. And so I do want to say thank you for your very thoughtful questions and for taking the time to go through this with us. I understand that things have changed so much in the last, I mean, it changes day to day. So I know that things have changed so much in the last 4 months and that it is not the world that we knew before. But I think that we have a unique opportunity to continue making these important investments in our infrastructure. And I do, again, want to try to find as many ways to find synergy as we can. And again, talking to the soup to nuts concept, I think we'll do as much as we can to find synergy in those ways.
Thank you, Ms. Day. If I didn't know any better, it sounds like you're running for office. You sound great.
No, I went to the school of Larry J. Mancini.
Whoa.
That's great. By the way, that's a compliment, and I see it as a compliment. Mr. Mancini?
Lawrence J. Not
Lawrence J. Mancini. My apologies to the CFO.
Great. Well, is any other comments or questions by committee members?
Thank you, Ms. Day, for answering our questions truthfully.
Council members?
It's just a lot of projects.
Sure.
Well done.
Right, sure.
Thank you.
Council members? All right. But I want to thank you, by the way.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll end the committee on a positive note and positive vibes, and thank you, Ms. Day, for bringing them, and Mr. Mancini. I think it's important that we all know how the money's being spent. The public feels confident. They know projects are being done. So keep up the good work. We look forward for additional updates, and we'll go from there. If there's nothing left at this point, there's nothing else before this honorable committee. I'm sorry? Okay, yes. So at this time, do we have a motion to continue the matter?
Motion to continue.
Second.
By Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there anything else that committee members or council members would like to state?
No, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to ask
Councilman Taylor.
Jordan. I'm going to put Jordan on the spot. If you had a choice, Buckland or Conley?
Ooh, that's a
You can't
tough
do
one.
that. Don't
That's
answer.
a tough one. I would say I'm not going to pick, but I will say that both of them are incredibly impressive. And
Good
I'm
one.
so excited to see the West End Intruders play. I'm super excited about that. But as a former Providence Public School student, I am excited to see our high school kids play football and soccer and all of that at Conley. So it's really exciting.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks
political answer. Very political answer.
Thank you.
You are running for something.
Well done. Well
She's
done.
learning. She's learning.
Thank you. I'm not running for anything, I promise.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You guys can't have her because she lives in the 7th Ward, so.
Whoa.
Family. Thank you. So a motion to adjourn by Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Any other comments? All right, with that, all in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
All
Thank you
opposed?
all.
Thank you.